All right, about the homework, the first question is number 6. So we're going to go through the steps of factoring. The factoring steps always are first check for greatest common factor. So we look at these two terms. Is there a greatest common factor other than 1? No. So we just skip that. Then there's 2 terms. So our only thing that we can really do for 2 terms is see if it's a difference of squares. So if it's a difference of squares, it'll be subtraction. Is it subtraction? Yep. And then is everything a perfect square? Is 4 a perfect square? Yes. X squared? Yeah. 25? Yeah. So the answer, yes, it is perfect square. So then we make 2 parentheses. One of them is plus, one of them is minus. And then, to answer your question, yeah, we're going to have to square root 4x squared. You say, what times itself makes 4x squared? 2x. So we put that in the first spot for both parentheses. What times itself makes 25? 5. So you put that in the second spot in both parentheses. Then, you go back. Then you go back and you say, 2x plus 5 is also a binomial. Is 2x plus 5 a difference of squares? Why not? Because it's not subtraction. Now, this one's subtraction. Is 2x minus 5 a difference of squares? No, because there's no squared. It's not squared. Okay, so then that means this is the final factored answer. Yes.
Okay, so for number 3, we put it in like 2 different.
Number 3 is a really good one to ask about. Yeah. Is it the second parenthesis that you're confused about? All right, let's go through number 3. So you first look at all the factors. All the terms. There's 4 terms. Is there any GCF, greatest common factor, in all 4 terms? Okay, so let me skip that. It's 4 terms, so we're going to group them. We're going to group the first 2 parentheses together and the last 2 parentheses together. Notice the plus sign in between. In this first parenthesis, we're going to factor. Is there a GCF in just these 2?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it?
3a squared.
3a squared. So that comes out, 3a squared. And we have left over 4a minus 3. Now, a lot of you are like, nothing came out of this one. It's okay. Then our next step is to factor out the new greatest common factor, which I'm going to factor out from here and here. These are my new terms, so I'm going to factor it out. What is in common above the lines that I just drew? 4a minus 3. So when I factor that out, that gets rid of the 4a minus 3 that's sitting there. Over here, it gets rid of the 4a minus 3 that's sitting here. When I factor it out, that 4a minus 3 goes in front, like undistributing. Then we have a second parenthesis. And after I cancel out these 4a minus 3s, what's left over in this first term? Then there is a plus sign. There has to be a number here. If I take a number and I divide it by itself, and 4a minus 3 is a number once I know what a is. If I take a number and I divide it by itself, there is a 1 in that place. So that one was a little bit confusing because that totally disappeared, but it didn't disappear. There's a 1 there. Okay, and then we go back and we check. Is 4a minus 3 a difference of squares?
No.
Why not?
Because the
a is not squared. Perfect. 3a squared plus 1, difference of squares?
No.
Why not? Addition. Great. So then we know it's that. What other questions? 24. Can you tell me what is the very first step factoring always?
Greatest common factor.
GCF, greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor between these 2 terms?
Yep.
10. We pull out that 10. Left over here we have x squared minus, there's a 10 over 10. 1. Then we go back and we say x squared minus 1. Is that a difference of squares?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it subtraction?
Yes.
Is x squared a perfect square?
Yes.
And then 1 times 1 is 1, so 1 is also a perfect square. So this one goes further. We break down our 10. We have an x and an x. We have a plus and a minus, and we have a 1 and a 1. Now, can x plus 1 go further? Because addition. Can x minus 1 go further? Because
It's not
not squared. Done. What else? 14? Oh, yeah. So the first question, is there a greatest common factor? Oh, my bad. I don't know why I thought that was 14. Excellent. Number 4. That's 15. Number 14. Who's doing your math teacher can come? Number 14. Actually, I answered questions about 15 today. I answered questions about 16 today. I answered a lot of questions in XH. So I knew you guys were going to have them. All right. So between these two, is there a greatest common factor?
Yes.
What is it? Y to the second power. So I'm going to pull that out. Y squared. I have left over x to the 4th minus 16y to the 4th. So now our question is, the stuff that's on the inside is a binomial, 2 terms. Is it difference of squares? If the answer is yes, which you are right, it is yes, we're going to make 2 parentheses, 1 plus, 1 minus. Those 2 parentheses are going to replace this 1 parenthesis. We have to square root everything. So what times itself makes x to the 4th? Squared. What times itself makes 16 and y to the 4th? 4y squared. Now we're going to go back with each binomial. So with this first binomial, is this a difference of squares? Even if it's a difference of squares? Why? Because it's addition. Is this one a difference of squares? Yes, because it's subtraction. X is squared, y is squared, and 4 is a perfect square. So this one gets worked down further. The other two just come down. So y squared comes down. X squared plus 4y squared comes down. But now instead of this last parenthesis, we're now going to have 2 parentheses. 1 plus, 1 minus. What multiplies by itself to give you x squared? X and x. What multiplies together to give you negative 4y squared? 2y and 2y. Now, does this one go further? Why not? I need more than 2 people answering this question because I know you all knew it. Does this one go further? No. Why not? Not squared. You see, you have to check them every single time to make sure that they are factored as far as they possibly can be factored. Another one. Okay. Did not hear what you said. 15? First question, is there a greatest common factor for all 4 terms? There's 4 terms, group them. What goes in the middle of the groups? Okay. What factors out of m to the 3rd minus m to the 2nd? M to the 2nd. Or m squared. That leaves me at the m minus 1. What factors out of 2m and 2? M minus 1. Then I have 2 new groups to look at. In these 2 new groups, is there a GCF? Is there something the same? M minus 1. So I'm going to take out that m minus 1. And then whatever's left will be in the other parentheses. So we've got an m squared plus 2. Now we check. M minus 1. Is that a difference of squares? Why not? That's squared. How about m squared plus 2? Is that a difference of squares?
No.
Why not? Addition. Good. What else? Or do you need to see answers, then you'll have more questions?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pause the video so it doesn't get really long while we look at this. Okay, so number 21, what is our very, 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 very first step of factoring always and forever? Is there a greatest common factor? So my very first step is I'm going to take out that 5. And I have left over x squared plus y, x, y, that's what I said, plus xz plus yz. And then we look inside our parentheses and we say, that's 4 terms, I'm going to factor by grouping. So now I'm going to group together the first 2 and the last 2 parentheses, and I'm going to go through the factoring within these groups. So inside this group, is there a GCF? So I'm going to take out that x. And when I take out that x, I have plus y left over. Over here, is there a GCF? Bring down your plus sign, take out the z. I have x plus y left over. Guess where that 5 is? Still out there. Then I'm going to look at these 2 groups and say, do we have a GCF between these 2 groups? So that's going to pull out of there, and we'll go x plus y here. And then what's left over is an x plus a z. But guess where that 5 is? Yeah, it's still on the outside. I can, if I want, have an extra parentheses, but I don't need them because this is all multiplication. And then I check. This is not a difference of squares, it's addition. Same thing with that one, so now I know I'm done. So that one's a little tricky because it had that GCF, plus more GCFs, plus more GCFs. Lots of greatest common factoring going on. Other questions that you'd like me to go through before we move on to day 2 of factoring?